child does something, gets themselves into some sort of situation or crisis, and you're left having to react and pick up the pieces. So when we talk about being proactive, we're saying plan ahead. Be prepared so that when things happen, you know how you're going to handle it. And part of that is clearly identify expectations and consequences before things go wrong. So, tell your child, because they're not mind readers, tell them what you want from them. Their job is to test every limit possible. They're teens, they're getting into an adulthood, and they have to figure out how to function in the world. And so they're going to try things that are going to drive you absolutely nuts. And if you let them know ahead of time, this is what I expect, it helps alleviate some of those days. Coupled with that is the consequences. Identify, maybe set up a contract or have it in writing that you can post on the fridge, what consequences are. If you expect, let's take curfew for example, your teen to be home for a 10 o'clock curfew on weeknights, set that out in advance, and then identify if they choose to not be home by 10, what's the consequence? And have that right there. So then, when they do come home late, there's no arguing, no fuss, no muss about, well, you're home late, I'm upset, it was 5 minutes late, you know, that's not acceptable, and so what do we do? You're going to get a punishment. It's right there. It's laid out. If you are even 1 minute late for your 10 o'clock curfew, this is the choice that you are going to make. This is the consequence that you will receive. It also alleviates kind of some headache on your part in regards to having some of the, typically when they come home late and you're worried and you're scared and they know they're in trouble and it escalates and there's yelling, this helps alleviate some of that. There's really no yelling necessary. Go check the fridge, what's your consequence? You're home 5 minutes late. You know there's a consequence, what is it? And then follow through with it. If the consequence is grounded or loss of some sort of privilege, make sure you do it so that they understand from day one that you will enforce the consequence, that it's not just some empty threat. And be a parent, not a friend. They need a parent, especially at these stages. So, and sometimes it's easy to get caught up in they're kind of distancing themselves and you kind of have some hurt feelings about it maybe, and you don't want to lose your teen and you want to be kind of cool to them. And those are all very understandable feelings, but what they need is a parent. And they will love you all the more for it because they will be staying out of trouble, they will be learning good life lessons, and it's what they need. So don't let them get away with stuff. Hold them accountable, and they will be well off for it in the end. When we're talking about being reactive, which is what we don't want, we're talking about waiting until something happens and then freaking out. Which is, if you don't set stuff out clearly ahead of time, that's basically what happens. Because your child, your teen, your adolescent is going to find any way they can to throw you over the edge. They're good at it. I think there's some like teenage tendencies for dummies. We need that book. This does not send a positive message. And what ends up happening is you lose control, and that opens the door wide open for you to be manipulated. And that's another awesome skill that we have as teenagers.
Along with this, on being proactive and not reactive, we talked about earlier, how many of your children have cell phones? Okay. When you call them and they say they're at Sally's house, you do realize that when you call them and they say, I'm at Sally's house, you really have no guarantee of them being at Sally's house. So we have included also in our packet, it's the 5W contract. It basically just goes over briefly what Kimberly had talked about regarding setting up something before your children leave. Because we all have cell phones, but we all know we can be driving down the car with our friends and saying, Mom, I'm at so-and-so's studying. and that is not true. So, to back it up or to have a second method, use this 5W contract. It talks about you have to have your child list, who they're with, where they're going, when they will be home, and then who will be there. And it also at the bottom, like Kimberly said, it gives a consequence. That way it's all set up ahead of time. And then it's like a contract, and both you and your child sign it before they leave.
Yeah, I would encourage you guys to make copies of that and use that. It's a way to hold them accountable. And it also identifies there's a spot for contact information. So it's very good to make them be able to provide you a number of where they're going to be at so that you can call them and make sure they're there.